I knew I was dead, because my last memory was a concrete stairwell filling with smoke, a radio screaming in my ear, and a wound no field dressing was going to solve. I had just shoved one of my men behind cover when the floor came up and hit me. Then someone whispered, "Dad?" I opened my eyes under warped wooden boards. 4 children stood around a narrow bed. The oldest girl clutched a bowl to her chest. A thin boy tried not to look frightened. A smaller girl hid behind his shoulder. The youngest, a round-faced little boy with wild golden brown hair, stared at me for 3 solemn seconds. "Are you still dead?" That was how I learned I had inherited 4 children. Before I had inherited a second shirt. That was how Kai's second life began. The memories arrived in broken pieces. His name in this world was Kai. He was 33. His wife had died 3 winters earlier. He lived at the edge of a border village called Greybrook. The previous owner of the body had been a hunter, although his results had rarely justified the title. 2 bad years had become loans, missed game, smaller meals, and finally a boar wound that sent him crawling home. Fever finished what the tusk started. The children had names now. Leah was 13, Ron was 10, Toby was 4. What remained from the former Kai was practical memory rather than another voice. Faces, prices, roads, debts, familiar hunting paths, and the location of a birch tree where the children's mother was buried. Those fragments carried one urgent fact. The house was almost out of food. Leia helped Kai sit up. Her serious green eyes tracked every change in his face while she kept the wooden bowl steady. The new body answered the movement with a wave of weakness that crowded his vision with dark spots. His arms were thin. The hands had old calluses, but very little strength remained behind them. A 3-day-old boar wound had closed only in places, and the inflamed tissue along his side pulled whenever he twisted. The contrast was almost insulting. Kai's mind remembered years of special operations, long marches, close fights, difficult shots, and the discipline of functioning under pressure. His new body became winded by sitting upright. Leah said the porridge was ready. Her tone belonged to someone who had learned to make decisions before she was old enough to enjoy them. She asked whether he could keep food down, because wasting the last oats would create a problem tomorrow. A pale light of text appeared in front of Kai's eyes. Hunter system activated. Available function, Hunter credit armory. Current Hunter credits, 0. Kai stared at the translucent panel. This part at least followed a logic he understood. A system had appeared. It offered one function. He opened the armory. The catalog made him forget the weak body for several seconds. The first pages held stone-tipped spears, hunting knives, bows, crossbows, and other equipment Greybrook could already produce. Farther down, the technology advanced. Early firearms appeared, then revolvers, shotguns, scoped rifles, modern individual weapons, and professional equipment from the world Kai had died in. He stopped on a modern rifle he knew how to use. The price was absurd. Kai returned to the first page. A simple spear cost little compared with everything farther down, yet buying it would still waste a rare resource. Wood existed outside. Iron existed outside. A village smith could shape a spearhead. Hunter credits should be saved for things this world could never make. He closed the listing and looked toward the corner where the old Kai had kept his equipment. I need the spear. Ron brightened immediately. You're going hunting? First I am going to find out whether that thing still qualifies as a spear. The boy ran to the rear wall and dragged out a cracked shaft with a loose iron head. Toby followed him, then looked at the empty air where Kai's eyes had been focused. Does the wall thing sell food? Kai checked. Food was not listed. Toby released a long, disappointed sigh. Bad system. Kai could not argue. The rest of the house supported Toby's review. The front door warped away from its frame near the floor. Cloth covered part of a cracked window. Firewood would last 2 nights if Leah rationed it carefully. A clay jar held a small amount of oats. Another contained salt. 3 onions and 1 turnip completed the visible supplies. Leia divided the final porridge into 5 portions. She gave herself the smallest. Kai pushed part of his portion back into the pot. Leia frowned. You need it. So do you. And you are 13. Eat. She hesitated before obeying. That pause told Kai more about the last 2 years than any inherited memory. The girl expected food to disappear and adults to fail. Kai ate slowly because his stomach cramped from receiving even a modest meal. Another system notice appeared. Daily family duty. Condition. None of your 4 children may go to sleep hungry. Basic warmth and household safety must be maintained. Reward. Small hunter credit payment. A former Special Forces soldier had reincarnated into a daily mission to feed 4 children. Kai regarded it as the most important assignment on the screen. By noon, he had repaired the spear as well as the available materials allowed. He trimmed the damaged section of the shaft, reset the iron head, and secured the weak joint with old cord. The result looked rough but usable. Ron hovered at his shoulder until Kai gave him the job of sorting the remaining cord by length. The boy attacked the task with the concentration of a recruit entrusted with something dangerous. Toby found a bent nail and declared it a sword. Mira stayed near the hearth with Leia. Her soft brown hair reached her chin, and her amber eyes kept moving from the sewing in her lap to Kai. Whenever he noticed, she looked down again. The family had every reason to be cautious. The former Kai had loved them, but affection had not filled the pantry or repaired the roof. When Kai stood with the spear, his legs trembled. Leia saw it immediately. You cannot go. I can make a short hunt. Father said that last time. The words escaped sharper than she intended. Her face tightened afterward. Kai understood. The last hunt had brought their father home bleeding, followed by 3 days of fever and a body that stopped breathing before dawn. Watching another man take the same spear toward the same forest must have felt like watching the disaster begin again. I will stay south of the creek, Kai said. If I am not back before the sun reaches the western ridge, go to Mara next door. Nobody comes looking for me. Ron started to speak. That includes you. His shoulders dropped. Your job is the door. Keep it shut and listen to Leia. Toby held up the bent nail. My job? Do not stab anyone with that. The youngest considered the assignment restrictive, but accepted it. Graybrook began only a few steps beyond the yard. 40 or 50 timber homes followed a muddy road beside a shallow river. Fields occupied the gentler ground, and dark pine forest climbed the hills beyond them. A blacksmith's hammer rang near the central square. Smoke rose from chimneys into a cold, clear sky. People noticed Kai walking with a spear. A woman carrying water stopped to stare. 2 men near the cooper's shed exchanged a glance. The inherited memories made the reason clear. Kai had been known as an unlucky hunter before the wound, and then as a dying one after it. An old man near the road called that Kai looked too thin to feed a fox. The fox will have to cook me first, Kai answered. The old man laughed until he coughed. That reaction helped. Graybrook had not rejected the old Kai. Most people had simply learned to expect very little from him. At the forest edge, Kai slowed. Different trees and unfamiliar species did not change the basic language of terrain. He checked the wind, read damp ground where animals had crossed, and avoided the easy trail that exposed him against open brush. He chose ground that offered cover and a simple downhill retreat if the body failed. Within half an hour, his breathing had become too loud. His mind knew the pace he wanted. His legs refused it. His thighs burned. Sweat gathered under his collar, despite the cold, and rising from a crouch required the spear as support. Kai adjusted without resentment. The body needed rebuilding. Starvation was a physical condition, not a personal insult. Rabbit sign appeared first. He followed a feeding route, waited near low brush, and let patience save energy. A gray rabbit emerged between roots 20 minutes later. The repaired bow was unreliable, so Kai waited until the animal came close enough for a clean spear strike. The system remained silent. That answered another question. Easy prey could feed the family and earn ordinary money, but it did not automatically produce hunter credits. Kai tied the rabbit to his belt and started home. A low growl came from brush ahead. A forest dog stepped into the trail. It was larger than the feral dogs Kai remembered from Earth, with a thick gray coat, yellow eyes, and old scars across its muzzle. Its ribs showed through fur. Hunger made the animal willing to take risks. Kai resisted the body's urge to retreat quickly. Running would invite pursuit, and this body would lose that race. He angled the spear forward and shifted until a broad tree protected his left side. The dog paced rather than charging immediately. Its gaze dropped again and again toward the rabbit. "You want dinner," Kai said quietly. "So do 4 children." The animal lunged. Kai let it commit, moved half a step behind the tree, and drove the spear into the line the dog had chosen. The impact slammed through his arms and nearly tore the weapon free. His knees buckled, but the tree absorbed part of the collision, and the repaired joint held. The forest dog collapsed among the leaves. Kai waited until its breathing stopped. Then the system appeared. Valid hunt completed. Forest dog, threat level low. Hunter credits awarded. 8. Current balance, 8. The number was small, its meaning was not. The hunter system worked. The dog also represented several meals. The walk home hurt more than the fight. Kai had to stop twice when his legs started shaking. He accepted the limitation and kept his pace controlled. Pride could not rebuild muscle. Ron spotted him from the doorway and sprinted halfway across the yard before remembering the order to stay near the house. He stopped in the mud with an expression caught between excitement and guilt. "You came back." Ron's eyes dropped to the rabbit and forest dog. "You got 2. Leah appeared behind him. She did not smile immediately. Her gaze checked Kai's hands, clothes, side, and the way he stood. Only after confirming there was no new blood did her shoulders relax. The children carried the rabbit inside. Kai handled the heavier carcass. That evening, meat simmered in the house for the first time in months. Leia stretched the rabbit with onions, oats, and broth, until one animal became 5 bowls. Part of the forest dog was cooked separately for the next day, while Kai planned to trade the hide. Toby stared into his bowl as though it might vanish. Ron ate too fast and burned his tongue. Leah told him to slow down while eating almost as quickly herself. Mira remained quiet. Halfway through the meal, she tore off a small piece of meat and slipped it into the pocket of her dress. Kai saw the movement. "Mira." She looked at Leah first. "Why did you put that there?" Mira lowered her eyes. "For tomorrow." The answer landed harder than the forest dog's weight had. Kai had seen civilian hunger during deployments in his first life. He understood rationing, supply failure, and what people did when food became uncertain. Hearing a 7-year-old save 1 bite because tomorrow had become a risk gave the problem a different shape. He put his own untouched piece on her plate. "Eat that one too." Mira stared at it. "There will be food tomorrow." Leah looked at him with an expression that wanted to trust the promise, and had learned better than to trust promises alone. Kai did not repeat himself. He would prove it with the pantry. When the bowls were empty and enough firewood remained for the night, the system appeared again. Daily family duty completed. Hunter credits awarded. 2. Current balance, 10. Toby had fallen asleep with his head on the table. Ron fought a yawn. Leah stacked the bowls. Mira had eaten the piece she tried to save. Kai opened the armory. A system spear remained cheap. He ignored it. A good bow cost more. He ignored that too. He scrolled through early firearms, old single-shot weapons, and farther into the modern catalog until the prices became ridiculous beside a balance of 10. The absurd prices gave the system a clear purpose. Tonight's objective had been dinner. The next was a full week in which none of the children had to wonder whether food would exist tomorrow. Over the next 6 days, Kai rebuilt enough strength to walk to the creek without sitting down halfway. And for now, that was progress worth measuring. He stopped thinking about recovery as one dramatic transformation. The body needed food, sleep, and work it could survive. Each morning, he ate before leaving. He walked farther than the day before, but not far enough to stagger home. He practiced drawing the repaired bow until his shoulder began to lose form, then stopped, rather than teaching weak muscles bad habits. At night, he carefully stretched around the injured side and checked whether the boar wound was swelling or growing hotter. Ron copied everything. The boy had thick chestnut hair, the same pale green eyes as Leah, and the absolute conviction that every exercise his father performed had been invented specifically for future hunters. On the second morning, Kai found him holding a water bucket at arm's length with a face so serious that he looked ready to negotiate with gravity. "Put it down before you drop it on your foot." Ron lowered the bucket. "I lasted longer today." "You lasted 12 seconds. Yesterday was 9. That was technically progress, so Kai gave him 3 safe exercises instead and explained that training meant doing the right amount repeatedly. Ron accepted the lesson with suspicious enthusiasm. Toby also joined. He lay flat on his back beside them in the yard, closed his eyes, and remained there. After a minute, Kai nudged his boot. "What are you doing?" "Recovering." "From what?" Toby opened one eye. "Training." Leah, carrying laundry to the line, made a sound that was very close to a laugh, and tried to hide it by coughing. Kai noticed, because she had not laughed once during his first 2 days awake. The family slowly learned that the man who had risen from the fever still knew their names, still remembered where their mother was buried, and still disliked turnips. He had changed in smaller ways that Leah could not miss. He stood straighter, even when his legs were weak. He checked the latch each night before sleeping. He began keeping a small knife in the same place on the shelf, instead of losing it under clothes. He counted food aloud with her, and included his own portion, rather than casually surrendering it until he collapsed. Most obvious of all, he came home with something almost every time he entered the forest. Not every hunt paid hunter credits. Rabbits, birds, and docile deer gave him food and ordinary money, but the system ignored easy prey. Foxes sometimes counted when they fought. Another forest dog earned 6 credits. A thick-necked marsh cat that tried to ambush him near the creek earned 12, and nearly took a strip from his sleeve. The small, daily family duty added 2 credits each night that the children ate enough and slept in a warm house. Kai treated that reward exactly as intended. Useful, steady, and too small to replace real hunting. By the 5th day, there was a sack of coarse grain in the pantry, 3 strings of dried meat under the rafters, and enough chopped wood to stop Leah from measuring every log with her eyes before feeding the stove. Ordinary money mattered as much as credits. A rabbit bought salt and lamp oil. A deer hide paid for thread, soap, and a pair of secondhand boots for Mira. Meat sold better when Kai carried it to the butcher himself, instead of through the hunting company that had handled most of the old Kai's sales. He learned quickly which parts of local monsters had value to apothecaries, and which impressive-looking horns were worth less than a good hide. The scraps of inherited memory provided prices. His old habit of writing field notes made them useful. Leia discovered it on the table and stared at the columns. "You wrote down the cost of onions." "We bought onions." "You also wrote down 1 copper for a needle." "We bought a needle." She turned a page. "You wrote down 2 coppers that you did not spend." "That is called saving." Leah looked at him as though the concept had personally offended her by arriving several years late. "I know what saving is." "Good. Then you can check my arithmetic." She did. She found 1 mistake. After that, the ledger became partly hers. On the 7th morning, Kai saw his new face clearly for the first time, in still water by the well. The old Kai had been distinctive enough that he wondered why he had imagined a forgettable village hunter. His hair was dark brown, almost black, with a narrow natural streak of silver running from his right temple. His eyes were pale gray-green. Weeks of hunger had sharpened his cheekbones, and short stubble made him look older than 33. Once healthy, he would be a broad-shouldered man. For now, his collar hung too loose around his neck. A voice behind him said, "Checking whether the fever made you handsome?" Varn stood near the well with 2 hunters behind him. He was in his late 40s and built like a doorframe, heavy through the chest and shoulders. His beard had gone gray along the jaw, but remained dark around the mouth. A red wool scarf was wrapped around his neck, despite the mild weather. The sort of small, expensive thing a village man wore because he wanted people to notice he could afford it. His left ear was missing a piece from some old fight. The inherited memories supplied the rest. Varn controlled Greybrook's hunting company. He arranged contracts with farmers and merchants, organized larger monster hunts, purchased hides, and held the debts of half a dozen poorer hunters. He had loaned the old Kai money after the wife's death, then more after a bad winter. Some of those loans had been fair, some had not. Varn looked Kai up and down, then glanced at the bundle of snares over his shoulder. "I heard you were walking again. And bringing in game." "That too," Varn smiled. It was not openly hostile. He used the smile of a man speaking to someone whose choices he considered temporary. He reminded Kai that 23 silver marks remained on the old debt, plus a share owed to the company for contracts and equipment. The amount itself matched the inherited ledger. The problem came when Varn mentioned that all game taken inside the Northern Company territory should pass through his shed for valuation. Kai knew that rule too. It applied to contracted members. The old Kai's membership had lapsed when he stopped paying dues during the winter. "I'm hunting south of the creek," Kai said. Varn's eyes narrowed slightly. Kai continued, "No company contract, no company equipment, no company share. I will repay the legal debt in installments." One of Varn's men smirked, clearly waiting for the older hunter to put the failed widower back in his place. Varn, instead, studied Kai's face. "Fever changed your manners. It improved my memory." For 1 second, Kai wondered whether he had pushed too hard. He still had 4 children in a weak house, and a body that could not survive a fistfight with Varn, much less Varn and 2 others. That did not mean surrendering money his family needed. Varn stepped closer and lowered his voice. He said Greybrook was a small place. Independent hunters discovered quickly that farmers preferred people they knew, and large bounties went to established crews. A man with 4 children should think carefully before making work harder for himself. The threat was soft enough to deny later. Kai nodded once. "Then I will take work nobody else wants." Varn laughed at that. "There is plenty of that." He left with his men. Kai watched them cross the road toward the hunting shed. Leah had once feared a visit from Varn because he could take the roof timber as payment on the debt. At the moment, that made him a real problem. Kai did not need to win every problem today. He needed income. 2 days later, income came to him in the shape of a furious boar. The animal had been tearing up barley fields east of Greybrook for almost a week. It was unusually large, with a scarred hide and 1 tusk broken near the base. 3 farmers pooled a bounty because losing another section of field before harvest would cost far more than paying a hunter. Varn's company had declined the job at the offered price. The boar came at night, changed entry points, and retreated into a tangle of thorn and rock where a group could not move easily. Kai accepted. The farmers looked doubtful until he asked to see every damaged field instead of walking straight into the woods. He spent half a day on sign. The boar was not clever in a human sense. It was experienced. It avoided the path where men usually approached, and used a shallow wash to move between cover and crops. 1 patch of churned mud showed where it rubbed its flank against a stump. Another held coarse hair. The tracks were deep enough to confirm the animal's weight. Kai's first plan was simple. He would approach along the downwind edge, place himself beside a narrow gap the boar used, and strike from a position where a thick tree limited the animal's ability to turn on him. He also prepared a second spear and left it within reach. An elaborate trap would only add materials, time, and new failure points his weakened body could not afford. He returned before dusk, ate, rested for an hour, and left after making Leah repeat the same rule as before. If he failed to return, the children went to their neighbor Mara. Nobody entered the forest looking for him. Leah hated the instruction. She repeated it anyway. Night hunting in an unfamiliar forest would have been reckless if the boar had not already shown a routine. Kai reached the position early and waited. Waiting was harder in the weak body than moving. Cold entered his knees. His injured side stiffened. Mosquitoes found the one strip of skin above his collar. The world narrowed to damp earth, black trunks, and the faint sound of insects. An hour passed. Then the forest went quiet to his right. Kai heard rooting, a heavy breath, the scrape of a hoof against stone. The boar emerged larger than the tracks had suggested. Its shoulder came nearly to Kai's waist. Mud crusted its bristles. The broken tusk made its head look lopsided, while the intact one curved long enough to open a man's thigh. Kai let it pass the first gap. The angle was wrong. He waited for the second. A gust of wind moved through the brush. The boar stopped. Its head came up. The wind had shifted. Kai's scent reached it. His plan had just expired. The boar spun with startling speed and charged the tree line. Kai moved sideways, expecting to use the trunk as a barrier. His right foot landed on wet roots. The leg failed under him. He hit one knee. The boar changed direction. For half a second, old reflexes demanded a movement the new body could not produce. Kai rejected the instinct and used what he had. He rolled behind the thick trunk as the boar struck it hard enough to shake dead needles from the branches. The animal squealed, backed, and came around the other side. Kai had lost the perfect position. His first spear lay 2 steps away, and 2 steps were too many. The second spear was behind the trunk, where he had placed it as a reserve. He caught it, planted the butt against a root, and angled the point toward the opening. The boar came again. This time, Kai did not try to outmove it. He made the animal choose the line. The spear point entered behind the front shoulder, but the boar's momentum bent the shaft and drove Kai backward. Pain tore through the healing wound in his side. The animal thrashed, nearly ripping the weapon free. The strike was deep, yet the boar remained on its feet and violently alive. Kai released the spear before it could drag him down. The boar stumbled past, turned, and tried to charge again, with the shaft hanging from its side. Kai reached the first spear. His arms felt heavy. His lungs burned. He waited until the boar committed, stepped outside the tusk line, and drove the second point into the wound channel with both hands. The animal crashed into him anyway. He hit the ground hard enough to lose his breath. For several seconds, all he could hear was his own heartbeat. Then the boar stopped moving. Kai rolled onto his back and stared through the branches at the stars. That, he said to nobody, was too close. The system answered. Valid hunt completed. Scar tusk boar. Threat level moderate. Hunter credits awarded. 62. Current balance, 118. Kai closed his eyes for a moment. The hunt had paid enough credits to cross the first real threshold. Getting the carcass home was a different problem. He could not drag an animal that size through the woods alone. At dawn, he returned to the farms, collected 2 men and a cart, then guided them back. The farmers stopped doubting him when they saw the boar. One of them walked around the carcass twice. Varn said you'd get yourself killed. Kai rubbed his bruised ribs. He nearly had a good prediction. The bounty came to 8 silver marks, plus Kai kept a generous portion of the meat and sold the hides separately. The farmers also agreed to buy some of the meat back after butchering, which struck Toby as a business model designed by confused adults. When the cart reached the house, the children came outside. Ron stared at the boar with open admiration. Toby immediately wanted to know whether they could keep the tusk. Mira looked at the amount of meat, and then at Leah. Leah touched the cart as if confirming it was real. Is all of this ours? Until I learned to eat a whole boar in one evening. Leia finally smiled. The next day became the first day the family spent money without choosing which basic need to ignore. Kai bought grain, beans, salt, 2 rounds of hard cheese, lamp oil, and enough dried fruit to make the children suspicious of him. He paid the healer for a salve and had his side properly examined. He replaced his cracked boots and bought sturdy second-hand ones for Ron. He purchased a load of firewood instead of requiring his healing body to split every piece immediately. Then he paid Varn 3 silver marks toward the legal debt and obtained a written mark from the village clerk, Sella. proving it. Varn accepted the payment with a pleasant expression that did not reach his eyes. That evening, after the children slept, Kai opened the system armory. His balance stood at 122 after another family duty reward. He ignored every sword, bow, and crossbow along the way. The item he wanted cost 100 credits. It was a plain single-shot hunting rifle from an early firearm era. Simple, durable, limited. The kind of weapon that forced its user to make the first shot matter. Compared with the modern rifles farther down the catalog, it was primitive. Compared with Greybrook, it might as well have fallen from the moon. Kai purchased it. The weapon materialized on the table with a soft pulse of light, and immediately became an ordinary physical object. Its weight settled into the wood. The smell of oil and metal reached him. His hands knew what it was before his mind finished accepting that the system had actually done it. For the first time since his death, Kai held a firearm. He checked it carefully and found everything in working order. Then he searched for ammunition. A separate listing appeared. Of course it did. Kai stared at the price for several seconds. Leah, who had returned for water, stopped in the doorway. What happened? I have been robbed. She looked at the strange weapon on the table, then at the empty room around it. By who? A shop that does not physically exist. Leia decided that the fever had left at least one permanent injury. Kai spent another 16 credits on a small supply of ammunition. His balance fell to 6. He had never been so pleased to be nearly broke. Kai waited until the following afternoon to test the rifle. He went well beyond the southern creek, chose a low hollow where the surrounding hills would swallow most of the sound, and set a broad piece of rotten plank against a dirt bank. He checked the area twice before handling the ammunition. The procedure was familiar enough to feel almost comforting. What was unfamiliar was the body behind it. Kai settled the stock against his shoulder, breathed out, and fired. The report cracked through the hollow. Birds exploded from the pines. The plank jumped against the bank. Kai lowered the rifle and immediately felt a deep complaint spreading through his shoulder. His old body would have considered the recoil ordinary. His current one had an opinion. He fired only enough to confirm the sights and then stopped. Ammunition cost hunter credits. Bruises cost sleep. Wasting either offended him. When he returned, Ron noticed the dark mark above his collar during dinner. You're hurt. I'm bruised. From a monster? From testing the new weapon. Ron thought about that. Who won? Kai continued eating. The weapon. Toby's spoon froze halfway to his mouth. Is that the Thunderstick? Kai had never called it that. The name survived anyway. For the next week, the rifle stayed locked inside a chest, whose hinges Kai reinforced with the blacksmith. Ordinary hunts did not deserve ammunition. He used the bow for deer, the spear when he had to, and simple snares where local law allowed them. The system weapon existed for prey that could justify its price. That opportunity arrived sooner than he preferred. Greybrook's western farms began losing animals. First, a chicken coop was torn apart, then a goat vanished. 2 nights later, something dragged a young calf under a fence and left blood across 20 paces of frozen grass. The farmers blamed wolves until an older shepherd found tracks near the riverbank and went pale. The prints were too large. Greybrook called the animals duskhounds. They looked like wolves from a distance, but grew heavier through the shoulders, with dark stripes along their flanks, and jaws capable of cracking the bones of livestock. A single duskhound avoided people. A coordinated pack could take a man before he cleared his spear. Varn sent 3 hunters to drive them away. They returned before sunset with 1 torn coat, a bitten forearm, and a great deal of anger. Varn announced at the tavern that the pack had moved north, and the problem was probably finished. Kai did not believe him. He visited the calf kill the next morning. The pack had fed only briefly before leaving. The direction of travel crossed the western ridge rather than going north. At a muddy bend near the river, he found 3 separate sets of tracks, and then 2 more. The largest print sank much deeper than the others. Kai followed at a distance for an hour. The pack was circling toward the edge of Greybrook. His house, sat on that edge. A system notification appeared while he crouched beside a patch of crushed fern. Unique hunt available. Threat: coordinated duskhound pack. Eliminate the pack before it attacks occupied homes. Reward: hunter credits based on confirmed threats. Completion bonus included. Kai accepted before the text finished fading. The mission did not change his priorities. It clarified them. The hounds were dangerous because they hunted together, not because each animal could survive a spear through the chest. He had limited ammunition and even more limited strength. Trying to walk into their den and shoot everything would be stupid. He spent the afternoon reading their route instead. The western forest narrowed between a rocky rise and a marshy strip near the river. The pack had crossed there twice. Kai marked the likely lines of approach and arranged a hunt that relied on terrain more than equipment. He warned the western farmers to bring small livestock inside before dark, and told Mara, the widowed neighbor, to keep her door barred. Leah listened as he explained that the children might hear noise that night. "Are they coming here?" she asked. "That is not the same answer." Kai paused. Leah had become too observant for comfortable lies. "They are moving this direction. I plan to intercept them outside the village. If anything happens near the house, you take the others into the pantry room and bar the inner door." The pantry room was barely larger than a closet, but it had one narrow entrance and a heavy wall shared with the chimney. Kai had repaired the latch 2 days earlier because he disliked not having a fallback location. Ron immediately said he could help. Kai immediately said he could not. The boy's face tightened. "I know how to use the small bow. Against a straw bundle, I can hit it. And tonight, you will stay with your sisters and brother." Ron looked ready to argue until Kai added that keeping 3 younger children calm during danger was a real responsibility. The boy straightened a little at that. Toby raised his hand. "What do I do?" "Listen to Leah. That is Ron's job." Toby looked deeply concerned about this sudden expansion of management. Kai left before sunset. 2 local hunters joined him, despite Varn's dismissal of the threat. One was Mara's brother, Joran, a lean man with a crooked nose and enough experience to understand tracks when someone pointed out what mattered. The other was a broad young hunter named Pell, who had been among the men laughing with Varn at the well. Pell did not apologize for that. He simply said his family's goat pen was on the western edge, and asked where Kai wanted him. Kai liked him more for the directness. He did not show them the rifle at first. Instead, he explained the pack's route and gave them one task: hold the northern side of the narrow ground, and make noise only when the hounds entered. Their purpose was to turn the animals toward the open strip below the rocks, rather than chase them. Joran glanced at the weak-looking spear in Kai's hand. "And what are you doing?" "Standing where they go." Pell stared at him. "That is usually the part we avoid. Then, tonight will be educational." The pack arrived after moonrise. Kai heard claws on stone before he saw eyes between the trees. 2 hounds moved first, cautious and low. A third remained behind them. The largest animal stayed farther upslope, using the younger ones to test the ground. Good pack behavior. Bad news for a simple ambush. Kai let the first animal pass his position. Joran and Pell waited. The second hound stopped and sniffed. Its head turned toward the concealed hunters. A branch snapped under Pell's boot. The forest erupted. Joran shouted. Pell struck his spear against a tree. The first hound wheeled away from the sound and raced exactly where Kai wanted it. The second chose a different route, scrambling over the rocks instead of entering the open strip. The plan had split in the first 3 seconds. Kai drove his spear into the first hound as it came through the narrow gap. The animal twisted violently. He released the shaft rather than wrestle it and stepped back. Above him, Pell cursed. The hound that climbs the rocks had reached their side. Kai could not help without exposing his position to the rest of the pack. He heard a brief crash, a shout from Joran. Then the animal yelped. The 2 hunters had managed it. 3 shapes moved in the trees ahead. The alpha had committed. Kai saw it clearly when it crossed a patch of moonlight. It was nearly twice the mass of the others, its muzzle white with age, and one eye filmed over. The pack spread around it. A younger hound rushed wide to Kai's left, while another advanced directly. He had hoped to keep the rifle for the alpha alone. The left hound changed that calculation. Kai dropped behind a low rock, drew the rifle from its wrapped cover, and brought it up. His breathing was already too fast from the spear strike. He forced one controlled breath, tracked the hound closing from the side, and fired. The sound slammed through the ravine. The hound fell in the leaves. Every other animal froze. So did Joran and Pell. Kai used the moment to move. The old single-shot weapon demanded time between shots, and the pack did not intend to grant it. He changed position behind a thicker tree, while the remaining young hound charged the place where the flash had appeared. Kai met it with the bow, because the bow was already there, and ammunition was not free. His first arrow struck high in the shoulder and failed to stop the animal. That was an error. He had rushed the shot. Kai abandoned the bow, took one step around the trunk, and used his hunting knife only because the wounded animal was already off balance. The struggle lasted several ugly seconds, and cost him a torn sleeve, a bruised wrist, and enough energy to make his vision pulse. When he pushed the animal away, the alpha was gone. The alpha was circling rather than fleeing. Kai heard Pell call his name from the rocks. "Stay where you are," Kai answered. He reloaded the rifle with deliberate care and listened. The old alpha had survived years of hunters. A loud new weapon had frightened it once. It would not charge the same position. Kai backed toward the open ground, placing the rock wall on one side. The moon had risen higher, silvering the low grass. A growl came from behind him. He turned. The alpha had doubled through the shallow water near the marsh, using the river smell to hide its approach. It was already close. Kai raised the rifle, but the hound lunged before the stock reached his shoulder. He fired from an imperfect position. The alpha spun, hit the ground, and came up again. For one sharp instant, the weapon had failed to deliver the clean ending everyone in this world would later imagine. The hound was wounded badly, yet momentum and rage carried it forward. Kai had no second shot ready. He stepped behind the last tree available and let the animal commit to the turn. Its injured side dragged half a fraction behind the other. Kai kicked the abandoned spear shaft into its path, not to injure it, but to break the line of its front feet. The alpha stumbled. Joran's spear entered from the side. Pell hit it a heartbeat later. The three men drove the animal down together. When it finally stopped moving, nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Pell pointed at the rifle in Kai's hand. What in the frozen hells was that? Kai checked the tree line first. A hunting weapon. Joran stared at him. A hunting weapon does not make the sky punch me in the ears. This one does. Pell approached the fallen hound and looked at the wound. His face lost some color. The system began adding rewards. Duskhound, 18 credits. Duskhound, 17 credits. Duskhound, 20 credits. Duskhound, 16 credits. Pack Alpha, 55 credits. Unique Hunt Completion Bonus, 70 credits. Current balance, 216. Kai read the number, while Joran continued staring at the rifle. The total included the daily family duty rewards accumulated during the week since he bought the gun. A second system line clarified something else. In an accepted unique hunt, a dangerous target counted when Kai materially contributed to its defeat or to the plan that brought it down. Merely being nearby did not qualify. Ordinary hunts still paid only for threats he genuinely hunted himself. The payment justified every cartridge he had spent. They dragged the carcasses toward the road at dawn. Other hunters arrived after hearing the gunshots, followed by farmers who had expected to find blood near their fences. Instead, they found 5 dead duskhounds. Rumors began before the bodies reached Greybrook. Pell called the rifle a metal bow exactly once. Joran corrected him by saying bows did not thunder. An elderly farmer asked whether Kai had found a mage's staff in the forest. Someone else claimed the weapon trapped lightning. By noon, A child near the bakery told Ron that his father controlled storms. Ron came home furious. "He does not control storms," he announced. Kai looked up from cleaning mud off the rifle. "Thank you." Ron folded his arms. "It is a thunderstick." Kai reconsidered his gratitude. The hunt paid well in ordinary money too. Duskhound hides were valuable because the striped fur was thick and water-resistant. The farmers added a reward for protecting the livestock. Kai sold most of the meat for animal feed and kept only a little. For the first time, he could repair the house in ways that did more than delay failure. A carpenter replaced the warped lower boards of the front door. The cracked window received new panes of uneven local glass. Kai bought 2 heavy blankets and discovered that children who had shared warmth for years could argue for 20 minutes about which blanket belonged to whom. He also kept the debt moving in the opposite direction. Over the next several days, 6 silver marks from ordinary hunt income went through Sella's desk in recorded installments, leaving Varn less room to invent numbers later. Leia received a proper winter cloak. She protested that her old one could last another year. Kai pointed at the tear near the shoulder. She said it could be patched. He pointed at the second tear. She said that could also be patched. Toby helpfully lifted the hem and found a third. Leia glared at him as if he had betrayed the family treasury. Kai bought the cloak. Mira still hid food. It happened less often, but the habit remained. One morning, Kai saw her slide half a piece of bread into a cloth pouch before leaving the table. Rather than correct her, Kai opened the pantry door. Inside stood a full sack of flour, beans, dried meat, 3 rounds of cheese, and jars of preserved vegetables. Mara had sold them cheaply after the hound attack. Kai tapped the flour sack. "There will be bread tonight." Mira looked at the shelves. "Tomorrow too? Tomorrow too. And after? If your brother does not eat the flour raw." Yes, Ron protested from the table that he had never eaten raw flour. Toby quietly wiped something white from his mouth. The system's family duty reward continued to arrive each night. Kai liked seeing it, although the 2 credits were now smaller than the income from a serious hunt. The message had become a private confirmation that the important part of the day was complete. His physical recovery showed just as clearly as the pantry. He gained weight. His shoulders filled out. The tremor in his legs disappeared on ordinary walks. He could spend half a day tracking without arriving home gray with exhaustion. The scar on his side still pulled during hard movement, but the healer said the tissue was sound. Kai never credited the system for any of it. Food had built that muscle. Sleep had repaired it. Repetition had taught the body what his mind already knew. 5 days after the Duskhound attack, he made his second significant purchase. A revolver cost 170 credits. The system offered older and cheaper handguns, but Kai wanted something reliable enough for close protection and compact enough to keep secured in the house. He had earned additional credits through smaller, dangerous hunts and daily missions, bringing his balance high enough to buy the revolver and a modest reserve of ammunition. The weapon materialized on a folded cloth in his newly repaired storage room. Ron heard that something had arrived and appeared at the door almost instantly. "Can I see it?" From there, Ron took 1 step closer. There, he stepped back. A little farther. Ron backed up until his shoulders were almost in the hallway. Toby observed the process, walked to the opposite wall, sat down with his back against it, and folded his hands. "I am the safest." Kai locked the revolver in a small iron-bound box when he was not carrying it, and spent an entire evening teaching one household rule. Nobody touched the box. Nobody touched any weapon lying beside it. Nobody tried to prove they were old enough. Ron listened with painful attention. Leia listened because she understood consequences. Mira nodded once. Toby raised his hand and asked whether the rule applied if a monster stole the box first. Kai told him that if a monster entered the house and started opening locks, Toby had permission to scream. That answer satisfied him. By the beginning of the 4th week, Greybrook had stopped calling Kai unlucky. The replacement nickname was not better. Thunder Hunter reached him through the butcher. Kai pretended he had not heard it. Varn definitely had. Varn waited 3 days before approaching him. He chose the hunting shed rather than the road, where the walls displayed antlers, old pelts, and the heads of monsters killed by company crews. Half the village's hunters drifted through the place at one time or another. Varn liked conversations with witnesses when he expected to win them. Kai had come to collect payment for a marsh predator taken near a mill. He found Varn leaning against the long counter with 2 cups of ale already poured. Drink? Not before noon. You used to. I used to miss deer too. A few hunters nearby pretended not to listen. Varn smiled and pushed 1 cup aside. He had shifted tactics since the well. The debt pressure had not worked. Public ridicule had stopped being useful after the Duskhounds. Now he offered partnership. He praised Kai's recent results, called them impressive, and said a man should know when his fortune had changed. Greybrook's company could provide larger contracts, porters, buyers, and men to handle dangerous drives. In exchange, Kai would bring his strange weapon into the company and let Varn examine it. Kai finished counting the silver the miller had paid him. No, Varn's smile thinned. You did not hear the terms. I heard the part that mattered. Varn said the weapon was useless as a secret if everyone already knew it existed. Someone would eventually steal it, buy it, or take it from Kai's body. Better to put it under the protection of a group strong enough to keep it. Kai tied the coin pouch to his belt. The last men you sent after Duskhounds came home after meeting one edge of the pack. I will manage my own protection. The room went quieter. Varn pushed away from the counter. Be careful what you think you understand. Kai met his gaze. I understand the debt is down to 14 silver marks. The clerk has every payment recorded. I understand my membership in your company ended last winter. I understand there is no law requiring me to hand you my property. Varn's missing ear reddened slightly. Kai left before the conversation could become a contest of insults. He had no interest in humiliating Varn for entertainment. A cornered man with influence and wounded pride could become more dangerous than an openly angry one. That afternoon, Kai moved the rifle, spare ammunition, and hunting gear out of the bedroom chest and into a small back room that had once held broken tools. He replaced the door, added a real lock, and barred the narrow window from inside. The revolver remained the one exception. Each night, it stayed locked in its iron box beside Kai's bed, close enough for an emergency and inaccessible to the children. Leah watched the carpenter finish and asked how much the work cost. Kai told her. She closed her eyes briefly. We could have bought grain for that. We already have grain. More grain. There is a limit to how much grain a family needs. Leah opened her eyes. I have not found it yet. Kai understood. For her, a full pantry still felt temporary. Security meant seeing food with her own eyes. Then we will keep enough for winter, he said. And we will still have a door that locks. That compromise she could accept. The next major problem entered Greybrook, on a cart under a canvas sheet. 3 men pulled the sheet away in the central square and revealed the body of a hunter. Kai recognized him as Orvin, one of Varn's experienced trackers. His leather coat had been crushed across the chest. 2 more men from the same hunting party were missing. The survivors spoke about a stonehorn. Greybrook knew the species. Stonehorns were mountain grazers that sometimes descended into the northern woods. They were taller than a horse at the shoulder and carried layered bone growth across the front of the skull, neck, and upper body. Most were dangerous only when cornered. This one had learned that people were worth attacking. Over the previous month, it had killed a charcoal burner, injured 2 farmers, then charged Varn's hunting party before they came close enough for a clean bow shot. The survivors said the animal had smelled them from an impossible distance, disappeared among the ridges, then circled behind them. Orvin died before the others understood it had returned. Varn announced that the company would organize a larger hunt after gathering men from 2 neighboring villages. Kai studied the body, then the broken shafts brought back from the site. He already knew the central problem. Getting close was the dangerous part. That evening, he opened the system catalog and returned to a weapon he had been watching since the first week. A bolt-action hunting rifle with a telescopic sight. Cost 520 hunter credits. Ammunition remained separate. Kai's balance was 31. Toby climbed onto the chair beside him, unable to see the system, but very interested in the expression on his father's face. Too much? Too much. Buy food instead. The bad system still does not sell food. Toby shook his head, disappointed that an invisible magical shop had learned nothing in 3 weeks. Kai set a new target. He did not hunt the Stonehorn yet. For the next 11 days, Greybrook saw a version of Kai that even Leah found exhausting. He selected work by risk, payment, and whether the target justified his time. He refused a farmer who wanted him to kill harmless foxes near a poultry yard because ordinary traps could solve the problem. He accepted a night hunt for a pale marsh bear that had learned to break into smokehouses. The animal was dangerous enough to earn 108 credits, and Kai killed it with his old single-shot rifle after spending most of the night tracking around flooded ground. 2 days later, he escorted a merchant cart through a wooded pass where road fangs had attacked travelers. The creatures were smaller than duskhounds, but hunted from steep ground. Kai's value on that job came from noticing the silence above the road before the first animal jumped. He ordered the cart stopped under a rock overhang, forced the pack to approach from one side, and let the merchant's own guards do most of the work. Kai killed only the leader when it broke through. The system awarded 83 credits across the genuine threats he personally hunted, while the merchant paid in silver for keeping the cart intact. At the mill, a long-limbed creature the villagers called a reed leaper had been stealing dogs and terrifying workers after dark. Kai did not waste a firearm on it. He studied where it crossed the water channel, waited with Pell, and used a heavy hunting spear when the animal committed to the bank. Pell took a bruised shoulder. Kai took a torn glove. They earned a clean carcass and split the ordinary payment. The system added 71 credits to Kai's balance. A ridge elk with abnormal antlers came next. Then a pair of cliff cats that had denned above the northern road. Several ordinary hunts filled the days between dangerous contracts. Their ordinary silver stayed separate from hunter credits, and Kai continued sending small recorded payments through Sela, while the system balance climbed. The daily family reward continued quietly in the background. The work improved more than Kai's credit balance. His body changed. By the middle of the 6th week, the hollows in his face had softened. The silver streak at his temple no longer made him look sick. His old coat pulled tighter across the shoulders. He could climb a slope while speaking in a normal voice, and the shaking that once followed an hour in the woods had disappeared. He still had limits. Long sprints punished his side. Heavy recoil over many shots left his shoulders sore. A poor night's sleep affected him more than it had in his old body. He respected those limits, because ignoring a known weakness was not courage. The children changed too. Ron learned to read tracks around the yard and nearby fields. Kai taught him to identify direction, age, and whether an animal was likely to be dangerous. The boy wanted lessons in fighting. Kai gave him lessons in getting home. If you see fresh duskhound tracks, Ron answered quickly, I leave. If you hear something large but cannot see it, I leave. If your friend says he knows a shortcut through a cave, Ron hesitated. Kai raised an eyebrow. I leave. Good. You may become an excellent hunter by surviving all the stupid ideas first. Leah took over more of the household accounts because she was better at bargaining for flour. She had also begun sewing for Mara's family in exchange for preserves. A decision she made herself, after realizing the pantry would stay full, even if she used some of her time on something other than emergency chores. Mira began asking for paper whenever Kai returned from the village store. She liked drawing animals from his descriptions. Her Stonehorn looked like a potato with 6 horns, but Kai told her the proportions were excellent. Toby maintained a rotating list of threats to household safety. The list included monsters, thieves, hot soup, loose chickens, and porridge on days when Leah cooked it too thick. On the 11th evening, Kai's balance reached 557. He waited until the children were asleep. The back room smelled of fresh wood and gun oil. On one wall hung the repaired local bow and the old spear. The single-shot rifle rested in its locked rack. The revolver remained secured beside Kai's bed, the one weapon he kept outside the back room at night. Kai opened the system armory and bought the bolt-action rifle with the telescopic sight. It appeared across his work table. This purchase felt different from the first gun. The early rifle had been an impossible advantage in this world, but it still forced Kai to fight on terms that a good local hunter could understand. He had to get within a practical hunting distance. He had one shot before the situation became complicated. The new rifle changed distance itself. Kai ran his hand along the stock, then checked the sight. He had used better equipment in his old life. Yet beside every bow in Greybrook, this rifle belonged to a different age of human problem-solving. He spent the remaining credits carefully on ammunition and kept a small reserve rather than emptying the account. The next morning, he went to Varn. The hunting master had gathered 9 men for the Stonehorn hunt. 2 had come from Eastmill, another settlement several hours away. They were checking spears and thick hunting bows in the yard behind the company shed. Varn looked surprised to see Kai. Changed your mind about working together? No. I came for the Stonehorn bounty. Varn laughed once. You are late. Kai pointed to the notice, nailed beside the door. The village reeve had posted a public payment for the monster after Orvin's death. The bounty did not belong exclusively to Varn's company. Varn said any fool could read a notice. Reaching the beast alive was harder. Then we agree on something, Kai replied. He left before Varn could see what was wrapped inside the long cloth bundle over his shoulder. Pell followed him out of the yard. You're really going alone? Most of the way. Pell glanced toward the company hunters. They have 10 men. The Stonehorn killed one of them because 10 men make noise. That is not comforting. Kai asked Pell to come only as far as a rocky overlook, south of the monster's territory. He wanted a second person who knew the route and could return for help if something went badly. Pell accepted, after making Kai swear he would not expect him to charge an armored monster with a spear. I have recently developed respect for my own skin, Pell explained. Keep developing it. They left before dawn. The Stonehorn's territory covered broken northern ground, where pine forest climbed toward exposed ridges. Snow still clung to shaded cuts. The animal had passed within the last day. Kai found crushed saplings, bark scraped away at shoulder height, and deep prints where wet soil collected between stones. Pell pointed toward the north. Varn's group will come through the lower ravine. Then, we will not. Kai led them east instead, climbing toward a long shelf of rock above the valley. By midday, Pell was breathing hard and looking increasingly confused. We passed the ravine an hour ago. Yes. The beast is down there. Probably. We are up here. Also true. Pell looked at him. Do you enjoy this? Kai almost smiled. They reached the overlook in the afternoon. From there, the lower valley lay open between bands of trees. A small stream glittered far below. Pell squinted and said he could barely distinguish fallen trunks from animals. Kai unwrapped the rifle. Pell became quiet. The telescopic sight drew even more attention than the weapon itself. Kai let him look through it once, keeping the rifle unloaded and controlled. Pell jerked his head back in surprise. The valley moved closer. The valley stayed where it was. That explanation is worse. They waited. Nearly 2 hours passed before Kai saw movement near the stream. The Stonehorn stepped between pines. Even through the optic, it looked massive. Its body resembled an enormous mountain bull, but gray bone plates layered over the shoulders and neck like natural armor. One horn had split into 3 forward points. Old scars marked the legs. This was a mature animal with the experience to survive hunters. Pell could not see it with the naked eye until Kai pointed out the moving gray shape. You are going to shoot from here? That is why we climbed. Nobody shoots from here. Kai settled into a stable position. I know. Distance changed the hunt, but it did not remove judgment. Wind moved through the valley. The animal changed direction often while feeding. Branches covered part of its body. Kai waited for a clear opportunity. Rather than proving the rifle could fire far, When the Stonehorn finally crossed open ground, Kai took the shot. The rifle cracked. Pell flinched despite expecting it. Far below, the Stonehorn staggered. Then it ran. Pell stared. Kai was already watching the animal through the optic. The first impact had hurt it, but failed to end the hunt. The bone plating had protected more than he wanted, and the animal's sudden movement told him it still had enormous strength. Not well enough. The Stonehorn vanished into trees. Kai did not fire blindly through branches. He moved. Pell followed as they left the first overlook and crossed behind the ridge to a second position. The Stonehorn knew danger had come from somewhere above the valley. If it was as experienced as the tracks suggested, staying in one place would turn advantage into predictability. They reached the second shelf 20 minutes later. The animal was nowhere in sight. Then Pell grabbed Kai's sleeve. A branch moved below them. The Stonehorn had not fled north. It had climbed. It was searching for the source of the attack. The monster emerged from the trees, much closer than before, blood dark along one plated shoulder. It swung its head, scenting the slope. If it reached the narrow approach to the shelf, the rifle would no longer solve the main problem. There would be nowhere to dodge a charge. Pell's face tightened. I can draw it left. You can stay behind the rock. Kai. If I miss, then you draw it left. Not before. Pell swallowed and moved into position. Kai waited. The Stonehorn stepped around a pine, exposing the side of its neck beneath the layered upper plate. The angle lasted less than a second. Before the animal turned uphill, Kai fired. The Stonehorn lurched, but remained standing. It roared and charged the shelf. Pell moved. He struck a stone with the flat of his spear and shouted from the left side, giving the monster a second target. The Stonehorn's head turned toward the sound. Its path shifted just enough to expose the less protected side behind the jaw and shoulder. Kai fired again. The animal stumbled. Its front legs folded into the slope. Momentum carried the huge body several paces through brush before it stopped against a fallen trunk. Kai remained on the rifle for several long seconds. Pell did not move at all. Finally, Kai lowered the weapon. Stay here. I was planning to stay here until next winter. Kai approached carefully from above, checked the animal, and confirmed the hunt was finished. The system appeared. Valid hunt completed. Stonehorn. Threat level high. Hunter credits awarded. 286. Regional threat bonus. 60. Current balance. 358. Kai looked at the number, satisfied. Then he looked uphill and heard distant voices. Varn's hunting party had heard the shots. They arrived half an hour later. 10 men came through the trees, carrying bows and long spears, sweating from the climb. Varn reached the front, saw Kai standing beside the dead Stonehorn, and stopped. The expression on his face was almost worth the ammunition cost. One of the East Mill hunters walked around the carcass and searched the surrounding ground. Where did you fight it? Pell pointed toward the first overlook far across the valley. The man followed his finger, squinted, and frowned. From there? Pell nodded eagerly. The first thunder came from there. Then we moved to the east shelf. It climbed after us. Another hunter looked at Kai's rifle. The questions started immediately. Was it magic? Was it dwarven? Did the metal tube throw invisible arrows? Could it kill anything from any distance? How many times could it thunder? Kai answered only what was necessary. It was a weapon. It had limits. The Stonehorn had needed several hits. He had no intention of selling it. Varn said very little. His eyes stayed on the rifle. That worried Kai more than the questions. The Stonehorn bounty and valuable parts paid enough ordinary silver that Kai could have erased nearly half the remaining debt in one day. The system reward refilled Kai's account after the expensive rifle purchase. More important, the story spread beyond Greybrook. A monster that had killed trained hunters had died before it reached striking distance of the man hunting it. Luck could explain a rabbit. Luck could explain one boar. It could not explain the Stonehorn. By the time Kai returned home, 2 children from the village were waiting near his fence to see the famous weapon. Leah drove them away before he had to. The following morning, a search party followed the Stonehorn's trail into the upper ravine and found the 2 hunters who had been missing since Orvan's death. One had died from his injuries. The other had survived with a broken ankle in a rock cleft and was carried back to Greybrook alive. The hunt had ended the threat, but it did not erase the cost that had brought Kai there. Toby met him at the door. Did the long thunderstick win? Kai set down his pack. Yes. Ron appeared behind Toby. How far? Kai looked at him. Ron corrected himself. I am not asking so I can try it. Good answer. Mira held up a new drawing. This Stonehorn still looked like a potato, but now the potato had been pierced by 3 dramatic lines from a tiny stick figure on a mountain. Kai pinned it inside the storage room. The rifle went on the locked rack beneath it. The Stonehorn changed Kai's place in Greybrook faster than he liked. People who had once offered him the worst price for hides now greeted him before he reached their stalls. Farmers came directly to the house with problems, instead of taking them to Varn's company first. The blacksmith began reserving scrap iron for Kai, because Kai paid on time and never argued over honest work. A tavern owner offered him free ale for telling the Stonehorn story to travelers. Kai paid for the ale and refused to tell the story. The tavern owner considered this poor business sense. Varn considered it a threat. He tried the debt again. 2 mornings after the Stonehorn hunt, a company clerk appeared at Kai's door with a new accounting sheet. The paper included equipment fees from the previous winter, late penalties, and a charge for access to northern hunting paths. Leah read the total over Kai's shoulder and went pale. It was almost twice the remaining legal debt. Kai took the paper to the village clerk. Sela was a narrow, elderly woman who disliked Varn, Kai, hunters, arguments, and almost every reason people entered her office. She inspected the old loan records, compared signatures, and scratched out half the new charges with such force that her pen tore the page. This one was never agreed. This one is a company membership fee after your membership ended. This one says, road maintenance. Varn does not own a road. He may believe he does. Sela stared at him over her spectacles. Men believe many expensive things. The lawful amount is 11 silver marks and 6 coppers. Kai placed 12 silver marks on her desk. Record the payment, return the extra. Sela counted twice, wrote 3 copies of the receipt, stamped them, and gave Kai 2. When Varn arrived after being summoned, he saw the coins and understood immediately. Kai pushed the lawful payment across the desk and let the money say everything about how far his family had moved from the days when Varn could threaten their roof. Debt settled. Sela confirmed it. Varn looked at the receipt, then at Kai. The financial chain that had held the old Kai for 2 years ended with the sound of 12 silver pieces sliding across wood. Varn picked up the money. You think this makes you independent? Legally, yes. Greybrook is larger than law. Sela cleared her throat. Varn glanced at her and corrected himself. Greybrook is larger than one clerk's desk. Better, Sela said. Kai left before he smiled. At home, Leia took the receipt and read it 3 times. We owe him nothing? Nothing lawful. What about the winter grain? Included. Mother's healer? That debt was paid before she died. Varn listed it twice. Leah sat down at the table. For a girl who constantly found chores, sitting still looked unnatural. Kai expected relief. What he saw instead was confusion. Debt had been part of her understanding of the future. Pay Varn. Save food. Survive winter. Repeat. Removing one of those pillars left empty space where a normal 13-year-old might have plans. Do you want anything? Kai asked. Leah frowned. We have food. That was not the question. Mara said the schoolkeeper lets older children use his books in the afternoon. Kai waited. Then, go tomorrow. Leah immediately found 3 reasons the household needed her. Kai answered each one. He could buy vegetables. Mira could help fold washing. Ron could carry wood. Toby could be assigned a task requiring neither fire nor knives. Toby, listening from under the table for reasons unknown, objected to the discriminatory final condition. Leah went to the schoolkeeper the next afternoon. That small decision pleased Kai more than paying Varn. Varn's response came 10 days later. Kai woke after midnight to a soft metallic click near the back wall. His eyes opened before he knew why. The house was dark. Rain tapped against the repaired window. From the next room came the slow breathing of sleeping children. Then, the sound came again. A small cup Kai had hung near the outer store shutter had struck the wall. Someone was moving behind the house. Kai sat up. The revolver was locked in the iron box beside his bed. He opened it quietly and stood. The old Kai's house had one serious advantage after weeks of repairs. Kai knew every floorboard, every latch, and every route between rooms. More importantly, the children knew the emergency rule. He crossed to Leah's door and touched her shoulder. She woke fast. He raised one finger to his lips and whispered one word. Room. Leah's face changed immediately. She moved to Ron. Toby woke when Leah lifted him and started to ask what was happening. Ron covered his mouth gently and whispered that it was the quiet operation. Toby nodded with enormous seriousness. Leah led them into the reinforced pantry room and barred the inner door. Kai heard the rear shutter open. 3 men entered the storage side of the house. They tried to move quietly, which told him they were searching rather than attacking. That did not make them harmless. A thief caught beside sleeping children could become violent very quickly. Kai positioned himself where the hallway gave him sight of the storage room entrance, while keeping the children's door behind solid wall. A shadow moved. One man whispered that the weapon room had to be farther inside. Another told him to shut up. Kai recognized the second voice, Darren, one of the hunters who often stood behind Varn at the company shed. That answered the important question. Kai spoke from the dark. Leave. All movement stopped. Darren whispered a curse. A hooded lamp opened, spilling yellow light across the floor. 3 men stood near the rear room. Darren carried a short club. Another had a knife. The third held an empty sack. They saw the revolver in Kai's hand. None of them understood it, but everyone in Greybrook knew what thunder weapons could do now. The man with the sack raised both hands immediately. Darren did not. He said they had come because Varn believed Kai was hiding company property. The claim was so poor that even the man beside him looked embarrassed. Kai told them to put every weapon on the floor and walk out the front door. The man with the knife obeyed. Darren hesitated. He was a strong man, younger than Kai, and had spent years seeing the old Kai bend whenever the company pressed. Pride made him read the scene as a challenge rather than an exit. He lunged, hurling the club toward Kai and rushing after it. Kai stepped aside from the thrown weapon. The revolver fired once. Kai had chosen an angle with the thick outer log wall, beyond Darren and the children's room, behind solid interior masonry. Darren crashed into the wall and went down clutching his upper arm. The blast inside the house punched Kai's hearing into a hard ringing. The other 2 men dropped flat before he ordered anything. From behind the pantry door, Toby shouted, "That was loud." Leah immediately hissed at him to be quiet. Kai almost laughed, which would have been inappropriate while holding 3 burglars at gunpoint. He kept the men where they were until Mara and 2 neighbors arrived, carrying lamps and farm tools. The gunshot had woken half the lane. Darren's wound was painful but survivable. Mara wrapped it while insulting his intelligence with the focused creativity of a woman who had raised 5 brothers. By dawn, the village reeve had all 3 intruders in the lockroom beside his office. Darren admitted Varn had told him to find the strange weapons. The other 2 men confirmed only that Darren recruited them for the break-in and promised company money. Varn denied everything. He claimed Darren had acted on his own after hearing rumors that Kai kept silver and monster parts in the house. Darren shouted that Varn was lying. Varn asked whether the reeve intended to trust a burglar trying to save himself. The problem was exactly as Kai expected. Everyone knew what had probably happened. Proving Varn personally ordered the break-in was harder. The Reeve charged the 3 intruders and barred them from carrying weapons inside Greybrook until judgment from the district magistrate. Varn walked away, furious, but legally untouched. Pell spat into the mud after him. He sent them. Probably. Probably? Darren said it. Darren also broke into my house. His word needs support. Pell looked offended by the concept of evidence. Kai went home. He had spent the entire morning thinking about Varn, witness statements, locks, and whether the rear wall needed another reinforcement. Then he saw the children. Leah stood near the stove, pale from lack of sleep. Ron tried to look composed and failed whenever he heard footsteps outside. Mira sat on the bench with her knees pulled against her chest. Toby was holding his wooden spoon like a weapon. When Kai entered, the youngest child jumped down, ran to him, and wrapped both arms around his leg. His hands were shaking. Kai crouched. Toby buried his face against Kai's shirt and asked whether the loud men were coming back. Kai answered that those men were locked up. The child nodded but did not let go. That was the moment Kai understood that feeding them had solved only the first emergency. He could become the best hunter in the district. He could earn enough credits to buy weapons kings would call divine artifacts. None of it mattered if his children spent every night listening for boots outside, because his enemies knew where he lived. A safe family could not depend entirely on whether Kai happened to be standing in the hallway with a revolver. He changed his spending plan that day. The next weeks had been meant to build savings quickly. Instead, Kai used a large share of his ordinary money on the house. The front and rear doors received stronger frames. The storage window was narrowed and reinforced. A mason repaired the weak lower section of the chimney wall and strengthened the pantry room. Kai paid for a proper interior bolt that Leah could operate quickly. He added simple noise warnings to the outer approaches and cleared brush near the walls so nobody could hide against the house. He focused the repairs on warning time and controlled access, rather than trying to build a fortress. He also practiced the family emergency plan during daylight until it stopped feeling like panic. Ron's job was to bring Mira and Toby to the safe room if Leah was outside. Leah's job was to count everyone and bar the door. Mira knew where the lamp and water were stored. Toby had one instruction: stay with them. Toby raised a hand. Can I fight if a monster comes in? No. A small monster? No. A 6 small monster? Toby, stay with them. Correct. The children laughed during the daylight practice, which kept the routine from turning the house into a place that felt permanently under siege. Varn lost more than the attempted theft gained him. Darren's accusation spread through Greybrook. Farmers stopped giving Varn the benefit of every doubt. 2 younger hunters left his company and began taking independent work with Pell. The village Reeve warned Varn publicly that another incident near Kai's property would bring the district magistrate, regardless of who signed the order. Varn still had influence. His company controlled equipment and contacts, yet he no longer controlled the story people told about Kai. Kai had become the man who killed the Stonehorn and protected the western farms. Varn had become the man whose associates were caught crawling through a widower's window. A week after the break-in, a stranger rode into Greybrook wearing a dark blue coat with silver stitching at the cuffs. He did not look like a noble. He sat too comfortably in a weather-stained saddle and carried his own travel pack. The short cloak over one shoulder bore the Iron Tower emblem of the Northern Border Service. Captain Saren was 38, perhaps 40, with copper-red hair cut close at the sides and a narrow white scar crossing one eyebrow. His eyes were a striking dark blue. Unlike Varn, he did not use size or volume to occupy a room. People moved for him because the badge on his collar carried royal authority, and because he had the calm manner of someone accustomed to being obeyed in dangerous places. He found Kai near the blacksmith's shed. Kai of Greybrook? Kai is enough. Saren accepted that and introduced himself. He had come to inspect reports concerning the Stonehorn. More precisely, he had come because the district office received descriptions of wounds that did not match arrows, bolts, spears, or any known magic used by licensed hunters. Kai glanced at the officer's empty hands. Am I accused of something? If you were, I would have brought paperwork. That is comforting. It should not be. Our paperwork is vicious. Kai liked him slightly after that. Saren asked to see the Stonehorn's preserved skull at Varn's shed, and whether Kai would accompany him. Kai agreed, because refusing would create more interest than answering simple questions. The skull still bore evidence of the hunt. Saren examined it for several minutes, then looked across the shed at Kai. People say you killed it from the far ridge. People say I control storms too. Do you? Only when the weather cooperates. Saren's mouth twitched. He left the question of confiscation untouched, and asked instead whether Kai's weapon could kill something larger than a stonehorn. Depends on the creature. Armored, vast for its size, intelligent enough to attack fortifications more than once. Kai's attention sharpened. Saren explained that something had appeared far north, along the Black Ridge. 3 months earlier, it had struck a border watchpost during a storm and torn through an outer gate. Soldiers drove it away, only after losing men. Several weeks later, it attacked a second position. Licensed battle mages had been requested, but the nearest companies were attached to other border sectors and could not be moved quickly. Border Command was already assembling a larger tracking force from soldiers and northern hunters. Saren had come south while that force gathered, looking for unusual specialists and investigating reports that might matter if ordinary bows and close-range magic failed again. I am not recruiting you today, he said. I am asking whether the possibility interests you. Kai thought of the repaired doors at home. No. Saren blinked once. That was fast. My local problems are not finished. The payment would be substantial. Most hunters ask how substantial before refusing. Then you should enjoy the novelty. Saren laughed quietly and took the rejection well. Before leaving, he gave Kai a small card stamped with the border tower and said the offer would remain open for a while. He also warned that unusual weapons attracted attention far beyond villages. Hiding completely was no longer realistic after the Stonehorn. Kai already knew. Saren was riding on to East Mill for an inspection and told the reeve he expected to pass through Greybrook again in 4 or 5 days on his return north. Then he mounted his horse. One question. Kai waited. What do you call the weapon? A rifle. Saren repeated the unfamiliar word once. Better than Thunderstick. Kai looked toward a cluster of children near the bakery, where Toby was almost certainly responsible for the other name. I agree. Saren rode north. Kai put the card in his pocket and returned to the blacksmith. The Black Ridge monster could wait. Greybrook still had one human problem, walking around in a red scarf. The problem solved itself badly. 4 days after Saren left, Kai found Pell waiting outside his house before sunrise. Pell had mud up to his knees and looked as if he had run most of the way from the northern fields. Varn caught something. Kai handed him water. That sentence needs more detail. An ironback calf, young one, bigger than a mule, smaller than a house. Kai stopped tying his boot. Ironbacks were known even to children in Greybrook. Huge herd monsters moved through the western foothills during seasonal migrations. Their hide contained dense ridges that hardened with age, giving the animals their name. Farmers feared them because fences meant nothing to several tons of moving muscle. Adult ironbacks rarely approached settlements on purpose. A captured young one changed that calculation. Where? Pell explained that Varn had been planning a reputation hunt. He and 5 loyal company men found a juvenile separated from the edge of a herd in the northern valley. They drove it into a reinforced livestock cage and moved it toward Greybrook overnight. Varn intended to use its calls to draw an adult into a prepared hunting ground. The plan itself was reckless, but not impossible. The reason behind it was worse. Pell had heard 2 of Varn's men arguing at the tavern. Varn expected the adult to be too strong for ordinary arrows. He wanted Kai drawn into the hunt after it began, with the strange rifles visible to a large group, and Kai forced to spend ammunition in public. Varn had prepared company papers, calling any outside hunter who entered the marked ground an emergency participant, even though the rule had no clear authority over Kai. The paper was only the respectable part of the plan. Several loyal men were supposed to surround Kai after the kill, claim the weapon as disputed collateral, and rely on Varn's witnesses until a district magistrate could sort out whose story mattered. He still thinks paper can make you hand over the rifle, Pell said. Paper backed by 6 men can cause trouble before a judge ever sees it, Kai replied. Pell looked unsure whether Kai was joking. Kai stood. Show me where they brought the calf. They reached the old livestock yard north of Greybrook after sunrise. Varn was already there with 8 men. The juvenile ironback slammed its shoulder against a timber cage while ropes reinforced the outer frame. It was enormous for something called a calf, with dark brown hide and pale ridges just beginning to harden along its back. Its calls were low enough to vibrate through the ground. Kai did not waste time arguing about motives. He examined the trampled approach, then walked beyond the yard toward the forest. Varn called after him that the hunt would begin in the afternoon. Kai kept walking. Tracks covered the wet earth north of the yard. The tracks belonged to many adults, not one. He followed for nearly a mile, climbing a low ridge where the ground softened under pines. Broken branches marked a broad movement corridor. Fresh dung steamed in the cold morning air. The herd had changed direction during the night. Kai crouched beside a print wider than both his hands. Pell came up behind him. How many? Enough. That is not a number, because I do not have one yet. They moved farther west. Another set of tracks joined the first. Smaller prints mixed with deep adult ones. The animals were not wandering separately toward the calf. The herd was gathering. Kai climbed the ridge and looked south. Greybrook lay below. Roofs clustered along the river. The livestock yard sat directly between the herd and the village. He ran back. The improved body could run now. It still punished him after distance, but he reached the yard breathing hard rather than collapsing. Varn was explaining positions to his hunters. Kai cut across him. Release the calf. Varn stared. What? Open the cage and drive it north, now. Several men looked at one another. Varn's face hardened. You are not commanding this hunt. There is no hunt. The herd is moving here, Varn said. Ironbacks did not move as a herd toward human noise. Adults might investigate a calf, but the others would remain in the valley. He had hunted the species before. Kai asked, when? 12 years ago. Did you steal a calf? Varn's jaw tightened. The juvenile struck the cage again. One support split. Kai heard a distant sound under the shouting. Low, rolling, too irregular for thunder. He turned north. Birds lifted above the trees in a long, dark line. Pell saw them too. Kai. Varn finally stopped talking. The sound grew. The sound came from branches first. Far too many branches moving at once. Kai looked at the cage, the village, and the narrowing time between them. The system appeared. Unique emergency hunt. Objective. Protect Greybrook from an ironback herd event. Threat evaluation. Severe. Hunter credits awarded per confirmed dangerous target. Completion reward based on settlement survival. Matriarch identified as primary threat. Kai accepted. Then he turned to Varn. Open the cage. This time Varn did. The juvenile did not cooperate. Terrified by men, pain, and the smell of its approaching herd, it burst through the half-opened gate, knocked one hunter into a fence, and ran south instead of north. Straight toward Greybrook. For 1 second, everyone watched in horror. Then Kai started issuing orders. Pell, get the reeve, ring the alarm bell, tell every family on the north side to move to the stone granary and chapel. Joran leads every hunter who can stand. Varn, send 2 riders west and east. If the herd splits, I need to know where. Varn bristled at being ordered. Kai pointed north, where the first distant trees were already moving. Argue after we survive. Varn moved. Greybrook had no formal militia worth the name. What it had were farmers, hunters, mill workers, carpenters, and people who had lived around dangerous wilderness all their lives. They understood urgency when the alarm bell began hammering over the square. Kai reached the village minutes behind the juvenile. The young ironback had run through a vegetable garden, smashed a fence, and become trapped between two wagons near the central road. It bellowed continuously, calling the herd toward it. Kai did not try to kill it. A dead calf would still smell like the herd and might make the adults even more violent. He ordered the wagons shifted to create a clear route south toward the river meadow. Men used ropes from a distance and noise from the sides to pressure the animal out of the street. After several attempts, the juvenile found the open path and lumbered toward the meadow. That redirected the immediate line of approach away from the densest houses. The calf's route bought them space, but the herd was still coming, and the northern edge of Greybrook had less than an hour. Kai climbed onto a cart in the square, looked at the faces gathering below, and began assigning jobs. Families with children and elderly people went to the chapel and the stone grain house, the two strongest buildings near the center. The village healer set up inside the grain house with water, clean cloth, and 2 assistants. Farmers moved livestock south and opened pens rather than leaving animals trapped behind weak fences. Carpenters and laborers brought wagons to block the broad northern road, not as a wall that could stop ironbacks, but as obstacles that could turn younger animals into narrower lanes. Hunters took the side streets and rooftops, where they could see without standing directly in a charge path. Joran organized arrows and spears. Pell gathered anyone strong enough to carry wounded people. Varn's company men handled the western side, because they knew the fields there. Kai surprised several people by leaving Varn in charge of them. Varn knew those men. He knew the ground. Removing him during preparation would make the village weaker. Guilt could wait. Leia arrived with the other children and found Kai near the grain house. She had already packed water, 2 blankets, and a small household medicine pouch. Kai felt a brief stab of pride that she had done exactly what he would have asked. Ron looked past him toward the barricades. I can carry arrows. No. I can stay behind the hunters. Your job is inside. Ron's face tightened. I am 10. Yes, I know the tracks. Yes. Then why teach me anything if I always have to hide? Kai crouched enough that they were eye to eye, because learning keeps you alive until you are old enough to choose your own risks. Today, I am choosing for you. Protect Mira and Toby. Help Leah. That is the job. Ron looked toward the northern road once more, then nodded. Mira hugged Kai quickly and went inside without speaking. Toby remained. He dug in his pocket and produced a small carved cylinder. It was crooked, made from pale wood, and had a blunt, rounded end. For the thunder stick. Kai took it. This is wood. It is an endless bullet. How is it endless? You do not shoot it. The logic was difficult to attack. Kai slipped the wooden piece into his shirt pocket. Then, I will save it. Toby nodded, satisfied, and ran after Leah. The northern rider returned at a gallop. They're coming. Kai climbed the grain house steps and looked over the roofs. The first ironbacks emerged from the tree line. More than a dozen shapes moved between trunks, some adult, some younger. Dust and broken needles hung in the air behind them. A massive female stood farther back, higher through the shoulders than the others. Pale armor riches rose along her spine and neck like overlapping stone. The matriarch. The herd smelled the calf in the river meadow. Then they smelled people. The lead animals accelerated. Kai's system rifle was already in his hands. He moved to the prepared northern position with Joran and Pell. Varn took the west line. The first wagon barrier spanned the broad road, leaving 2 deliberate gaps where hunters could redirect animals toward open ground. Kai reminded everyone of the most important rule. Do not chase. The goal was to keep the herd moving past the village, not surround each animal and create a fight on every street. The first young ironback hit the outer field at speed. Arrows struck its hide and bounced or buried shallowly. A second veered toward a cottage. Men on the sidelines shouted and struck shields against fence posts. The noise turned it back toward the road. The third did not turn. It lowered its plated head and aimed for the wagon barrier. Kai fired the bolt-action rifle. The shot hit hard enough to stagger it, but the animal continued. He fired again after the brief interval required by the weapon. The ironback collapsed before reaching the wagons and slid through mud. The hunters beside Kai stared for half a heartbeat. "Watch the road," he snapped. They did. More animals entered. The defense became a moving problem rather than a single battle. A pair of young ironbacks broke east. Pell's group ran along a side lane, using walls and farm carts for cover, while they pressured the animals away from houses. One hunter planted a spear and discovered immediately that he was not strong enough to stop several hundred kilograms of angry muscle. The shaft snapped. Joran dragged him behind a stone trough before the animal could turn. On the west side, Varn's men used burning straw bundles held at the ends of long poles to create a line the animals disliked crossing. It worked until one ironback panicked and drove straight through. Varn himself fired an arrow into its face, then jumped behind a wagon as the beast smashed through the wheel. He came up muddy and furious, but alive. Kai took a shot from the grain house roof at an adult moving toward the chapel. The first impact turned its head. A second stopped it near a garden wall. Every dangerous kill added credits. Ironback juvenile. 74. Ironback young adult. 109. Ironback adult. 138. Another. 127. Another. 145. Kai noticed the numbers only between immediate threats. His balance rose past 500, then 600. A scream came from the east lane. He turned. A cart had overturned. Pell was pinned by one leg, while a young ironback spun in the lane, confused and angry. Two hunters tried to pull the cart and failed. Kai had no clean line from the roof. He descended the rear ladder, crossed behind two houses, and reached the lane as the ironback charged the trapped men. The bolt-action rifle fired once. The animal stumbled, but kept moving. Kai fired again. It crashed into the side of the overturned cart, missing Pell by less than an arm's length. The impact shifted the cart enough for the others to drag him free. Pell's leg was badly bruised, but unbroken. "I had it," he gasped. "You were under a cart." "A tactical position. Stay with the healer." Kai ran back north. The first wave had entered fully now, but the plan was working better than chaos suggested. Most of the herd found the open route around the western field and continued toward the calf's calls in the river meadow. The hunters did not need to kill them. They needed to prevent the worst animals from plowing through homes. The settlement took damage. Fences vanished. A storage shed collapsed. One roof corner broke under an ironback brushing past it. Several hunters suffered cuts, and one man had a fractured arm. The center still held. Then the northern tree line opened around the matriarch. She had not followed the others. She stood at the edge of the field, watching. The calf bellowed from the meadow. The matriarch answered. The sound rolled across Graybrook deep enough to make window glass vibrate. Kai watched her posture and understood the next problem. The herd had been redirected. She was not going to be. The matriarch had identified the village as the source of danger around the calf. She began walking directly toward it. Varn appeared beside Kai, breathing hard, red scarf gone, and blood running from a shallow cut on his forehead. "We need everyone on her." "Not yet. Look at the size of it." "I am." Arrows from the western line began striking the matriarch anyway. Most failed to reach anything important. The animal accelerated. Kai fired. The heavy head jerked. The matriarch slowed for one step, then continued. He fired again. Another impact marked the armor near her shoulder, still moving. The old rifle could hurt her. Stopping her before she reached the center would demand too much time and too much ammunition. Kai checked his system balance. Credits from the first wave, the daily family rewards, and what remained from previous hunts had pushed the balance just over 1,000. For weeks, one item had sat far down his catalog, like a promise. Modern heavy semi-automatic rifle. Cost $820. The ammunition package that made the purchase useful cost most of what remained. Kai looked at the matriarch, then at the distance to the stone grain house where his children waited. The decision did not require discussion. "Hold the north road," he told Varn. "Do not let the younger ones follow her through." Varn stared at him. Where are you going? Shopping. Varn had no idea what that meant. Kai ran. The system could materialize a purchase wherever he stood, but everything it produced became real weight immediately. Buying a heavy weapon and a full ammunition package in the open square would leave his bolt-action rifle, spare cartridges, and the new supplies scattered in a battle zone. His house was less than 2 minutes away along a lane the herd had already passed. He used that margin. Kai entered the locked storage room and opened the system. The modern rifle card filled his vision. He purchased it. The weapon materialized across the workbench. The room now contained the entire distance between two worlds. On one wall hung the repaired spear the old Kai had carried while his children starved. Beneath it rested the first single-shot rifle. The revolver's iron box sat beside the rack. The scoped bolt-action rifle went into its secured place. Now a modern weapon lay under Kai's hands. He bought ammunition. The balance dropped almost to nothing. For an instant, he remembered his first night in this house, staring at that same category, with 10 credits, and thinking the price belonged to another lifetime. It had taken about 2 months. Outside, something heavy crashed through timber. Kai took every round that was already ready to carry with the weapon, and enough reserve to fill his pockets without slowing himself. The rest remained sealed in the locked room. Then he ran back toward the center of Greybrook and found the village in worse shape. The matriarch had broken the first wagon barrier and crossed the northern road. Varn's line had turned 2 younger animals, but a third had smashed through a fence and was running between houses. Joran and 3 farmers were driving it toward open ground with noise and long poles. The matriarch itself had reached the square. That was the scene people would remember for years. Arrows stuck from her plated hide at useless angles. A broken spear hung near one leg. Dust coated her massive shoulders. Men who had hunted monsters all their lives were giving ground, because every ordinary weapon they carried demanded a distance the animal could erase in seconds. Kai climbed the stone stair along the grain-house wall and reached the roof. The modern rifle came up. The first shot struck the matriarch hard enough to twist her front half. She stumbled sideways into a market stall and destroyed it. For the first time that day, the people below saw the enormous beast lose balance from a weapon they could not understand. Kai fired again. The matriarch roared. A third shot forced her to turn away from the grain house. Turning the matriarch away from the grain house mattered more than the wound itself, because the children and half the village were inside. Kai shifted along the roof as the animal searched for the source of the thunder. The semi-automatic action allowed him to keep pressure on the target in a way none of his earlier weapons could. The difference was immediate. He no longer spent the same long interval preparing every follow-up, while several tons of monster continued closing. The advantage was enormous. The matriarch was enormous too. Her front armor absorbed or deflected impacts that would have ended smaller creatures. Kai aimed for opportunities, rather than firing wildly. The ammunition cost credits. More importantly, careless shots in a village cost people. The matriarch charged the grain house. Kai fired twice. She broke through a wooden awning and slammed into the stone wall below him. The roof shook. Inside, people screamed. Kai nearly lost his footing. The matriarch backed away, blood visible along one side now. She was injured badly enough that movement had become uneven, yet rage kept her dangerous. Varn shouted from the square that another adult ironback had entered the north road. Kai looked. Joran's group had it, but barely. He could not solve both threats from the roof. Varn, take the north road. Varn stared at the matriarch, then at Kai. For all his greed, he did not run. He gathered his remaining company hunters and went north. Kai turned back to the matriarch. She had moved behind the grain house, using the building itself to break his line of sight. A moment later, stone scraped below the rear edge. She was circling through the eastern lane toward the route that led from the square to the river meadow. Kai descended from the opposite side and crossed the roof of an adjoining stable. A man shouted near the square. One of Varn's hunters, a thin fellow named Kale, had grabbed the reeve's sleeve and was yelling over the noise. The calf was Varn's idea. He said one adult would come. He said we'd make Kai use the thunder rifle and take it after. I told him the herd was close. He said they never move for calves. The Reeves stared at him. Varn, hearing from the North Road, shouted that Kale was lying to save himself. Kale screamed back that he was done taking blame for Varn's mistakes. The argument lasted only seconds because an ironback smashed through a fence nearby and reminded everyone of the current priority. Kai called down from the roof. If we live, you can have the trial. Move. That ended it. The matriarch entered the east lane. Kai jumped down onto a lower shed roof and followed parallel to her movement. The lane led directly toward the rear of the grain house. Joran saw it and started moving men. We need her turned. Kai looked ahead. A stone watering trough narrowed the lane near a blacksmith wall. If the matriarch stayed straight, she would reach the building. If the hunters could make her turn toward the open square, Kai would regain a clear line. Joran understood before Kai finished pointing. He and 2 hunters ran to the far side and created enough noise to draw the matriarch's attention. A farmer rolled a loose barrel into the lane. The barrel did not hurt the monster. It struck stone, bounced, and changed the pattern of movement in front of her. The matriarch turned toward the sound. For one breath, her injured side opened to Kai. He fired. The impact drove her against the watering trough. Joran's hunters scattered as she swung her head. One man was too slow. The edge of her plated shoulder caught him and threw him into the blacksmith wall. Kai saw the man's leg twist badly. Pell, limping from his earlier injury, came out of the healer's area anyway and dragged the hunter behind cover. I told you to stay inside, Kai shouted. Pell shouted back, I developed less respect for my skin. The matriarch charged Kai's shed. He jumped down behind the stone trough as she hit the roof supports. Timber collapsed where he had been standing. Dust swallowed the lane. Kai moved through it by memory of the layout, keeping the stone trough between himself and the animal until he reached the square. The matriarch emerged after him, slower now, but still capable of crossing the square in seconds. The modern rifle had shifted the balance. Her size, armor, and endurance still made every mistake dangerous. Kai checked the ammunition he had brought from the storage room. More remained locked at home, but nothing there could help him before the matriarch reached the grain house. He had spent more during the first frantic minutes because every shot had carried 2 purposes: hurt the matriarch and keep her away from the grain house. The next shots needed to finish the problem. The matriarch crossed the square. Kai retreated toward the stone steps, using distance as long as he could. He fired once. When she exposed her wounded side, she stumbled. Another shot. She kept coming. Behind her, Joran and Pell began shouting from opposite directions, trying to pull her attention away from the grain house and toward the open northern road. The beast ignored them. Then, Varn returned from the road, carrying a broken hunting spear. He saw the matriarch's line, picked up a fallen shield, and hammered the spear shaft against it. The noise snapped her head toward him. Here, you ugly mountain. Kai would have chosen different words. The matriarch turned. Varn immediately regretted his success. He ran behind a stone market column as the beast charged. The column survived. The wooden stall beside it did not. The turn exposed the injured section along the matriarch's side and neck. Kai raised the rifle. The first shot made her stagger. The second dropped one front leg. She tried to rise, still facing the grain house. Kai fired the last round he had ready. The matriarch collapsed in the center of Greybrook. Her weight hit the earth hard enough to shake dust from nearby roofs. For several seconds, the village kept moving because nobody trusted silence yet. Hunters watched the northern road. Farmers checked side streets. Kai held his rifle on the fallen animal until he was certain it would not rise. Then, Joran slowly lowered his spear. Pell sat down in the mud. Varn came out from behind the market column, missing one boot. The western rider returned at a gallop before anyone rang the all-clear. He had followed the surviving herd far enough to see the juvenile join them in the river meadow. Once the calf was moving with its own kind, the remaining ironbacks continued southwest along the river and away from Greybrook. Only after that report did the bell tower stop ringing. Silence arrived in pieces. A baby cried inside the chapel. Someone near the North Road began laughing from pure exhaustion. The healer shouted for injured people to be brought in, rather than stand around admiring the carcass. Kai's system filled his vision. Ironback matriarch hunt completed. Primary threat reward. 620 hunter credits. Settlement defense completion bonus. 480 hunter credits. Additional dangerous targets confirmed. 263 hunter credits. Emergency objective complete. Kai looked at the total balance. More credits than he had ever held at once. The system armory icon waited at the edge of his vision. He closed it. Then he ran into the grain house. Leah had the door open before he reached it. Ron stood beside her, holding Toby's hand. Mira was behind them. All four were dusty, frightened, and alive. Kai stopped so fast, his boots slid on the stone floor. Toby looked at the rifle, then at Kai. "Did you use the endless bullet?" Kai touched the wooden piece, still in his shirt pocket. "I saved it." Toby nodded as if that explained the entire victory. Mira hugged Kai first. Ron followed, while trying to pretend he was only checking whether Kai had been hurt. Leia waited half a second longer, then joined them. Kai stood in the middle of the stone entry, with 4 children wrapped around him, and realized he could hear his own heartbeat more clearly than the system notification he had just dismissed. Outside, Greybrook had survived. The northern road was torn apart. 3 homes had serious damage. A storage shed and several market stalls were gone. Livestock fences would need weeks of repair. 11 people were injured, 2 seriously. Nobody in the village had died. That fact was partly luck. It was also preparation, cooperation, and a village that had followed orders quickly enough to matter. Kai refused every attempt to make the defense solely his achievement. Joran had held the eastern lane. Pell had pulled 2 injured hunters out of danger while limping himself. The farmers opened a migration route instead of defending fences that could be rebuilt. The healer kept panic from turning injuries into deaths. Even Varn, after causing the disaster, had fought when the village needed him. Varn's decisions still required an answer. By evening, the evidence had become impossible to bury. Dark hair, blood, and fresh rope fibers remained on the broken cage, while tracks showed exactly where the juvenile had been dragged and held. Kale repeated his statement in front of the reeve. 2 other hunters admitted they had been told the calf would force Kai into Varn's organized hunt. Pell testified about what he heard before dawn. The ruined cage stood north of the village, as a physical monument to bad judgment. Captain Saren returned on the route he had mentioned before leaving. He was traveling back from East Mill with 6 border riders when they saw smoke above Greybrook and heard the last gunshots. They pushed their horses hard and reached the village less than an hour after the matriarch fell. Saren dismounted in the square, stared at the carcass, looked at Kai's modern rifle, then returned his gaze to the carcass. I was gone 4 days. Kai rubbed dust from his face. It was an active week. Saren listened to the reeve, Kale, Varn, and several witnesses. The reeve still held local civil authority, but Saren's border commission allowed him to place people under temporary royal hold when reckless actions created a monster emergency threatening a settlement. That gave the village a lawful way to keep Varn from walking away before the district magistrate arrived. Varn tried to argue that catching the calf had been reckless but not criminal. Saren agreed with the first word. Then he asked whether Varn had transported a dangerous herd animal toward an occupied settlement, concealed evidence of the approaching herd, and planned to take another hunter's weapon by using disputed company authority. Varn denied concealing the herd. Kale said he had warned him. Another hunter confirmed it. Saren's expression hardened. At the reeve's request, he placed Varn under temporary royal hold, pending a district hearing for reckless endangerment, unlawful seizure planning, and connection to the earlier break-in. Darren's previous statement now had support from a pattern of behavior and witnesses. Varn stood in the center of the damaged square, while one of Saren's soldiers took his hunting knife. For the first time since Kai woke in this world, The older hunter looked tired, rather than powerful. He met Kai's eyes. "You took everything from me." Kai looked around, at the broken stalls, the injured hunter being carried to the healer, the frightened families coming out of the chapel. "You brought an ironback calf to your own village. I did not make that choice for you." Varn had no answer that mattered. Saren did not drag him away in chains through a cheering crowd. Greybrook was too exhausted for theater. Varn walked under guard to the Reeves lockroom and sat down on the same bench Darren had used weeks earlier. His story in Greybrook ended quietly. The system's emergency reward remained waiting. Kai still did not open the shop. He spent the evening helping move wounded people, checking damaged homes, and finding a place for families whose roofs were unsafe. The butcher and farmers began working on the ironback carcasses before the meat spoiled. Every adult part had value. Hide plates, meat, horn, tendons, and other materials would bring significant ordinary money once district buyers arrived. The matriarch alone was worth more than several years of the old Kai's income. At midnight, Kai returned home with the children. One side of their outer fence had been crushed, but the house stood. Mira fell asleep at the table while still wearing her cloak. Ron tried to ask 3 questions about the battle, and yawned through the second. Toby placed his wooden endless bullet on the table, and told Kai he could borrow it again tomorrow. Kai carried the youngest 2 to bed. When all 4 children were asleep, the family duty notification appeared. Daily family duty completed. Hunter credits awarded. 2. After more than 1,000 credits from the emergency mission, the 2-credit reward was almost comically small. Kai stood in the dark hallway, looking at it, then smiled. It remained the payment he cared most about receiving every day. Greybrook spent the next 2 weeks rebuilding, and those quieter days became the clearest proof that Kai had won the first part of his new life. The village received district money for emergency repairs, but the ironback carcasses paid even more. Buyers arrived from East Mill and 2 larger towns as soon as word spread. Tanners wanted the hardened hide. Apothecaries purchased glands and preserved organs. Armorers argued over plates from the matriarch's back. The meat was divided first among Greybrook households, then salted and sold in bulk. Kai's legal share came from the animals he had killed and the public defense bounty. It was enough that Leia stopped asking whether a purchase would leave them unable to buy flour next week. Her questions changed from whether they could afford something to whether the seller was charging a fair price. Kai repaired the fence, then improved the house properly. The roof received new boards instead of another patch. The rear wall was straightened. The children moved out of the room where 3 of them had been sleeping together, and into 2 small bedrooms. A carpenter built shelves that actually stood level. The stove chimneys stopped leaking smoke whenever the wind changed. Kai refused suggestions to build a large new house near the square. The existing home was warm, safe, and theirs. He wanted repairs, not a monument. He did spend more than Leah approved on the weapons room. The back room gained a reinforced door, dry storage, secure racks, and a cabinet for ammunition. Every weapon remained a physical object. The system did not hide them in an invisible space when he was finished. If Kai bought something, he had to protect it, maintain it, carry it, and live with the possibility of losing it. That rule made the room feel real. On the far wall, he arranged the path deliberately. The repaired village spear stood first. Beside it hummed the old bow. Then came the single-shot hunting rifle. The revolver remained locked in its box below. The scoped bolt-action rifle rested in the middle rack. At the end sat the modern semi-automatic rifle he had purchased, while an ironback matriarch crossed Greybrook. Mira's drawings occupied the space above them. The potato-shaped stonehorn was joined by an ironback matriarch, so enormous that it covered 2 sheets of paper. In Mira's version, Kai stood on a roof, with legs twice as long as his body, and a thunderstick that produced a yellow cloud shaped like a flower. Kai considered it an accurate historical record. His body had recovered too. By the 11th week, the man reflected in the water trough looked like the person the old Kai might have become without years of hunger. His shoulders had broadened. Healthy weight softened the severe lines around his mouth. The silver streak through his dark hair remained, making him easy to recognize from across the square. Long work no longer left him trembling. He could run the village road, climb the northern ridge, and hunt for a full day. A hard impact could still break Kai's bones, a blade could kill him, and exhaustion accumulated if he ignored food or sleep. The system had never changed a physical statistic because there were no statistics to change. It supplied tools. His recovered body came from using them while eating and resting like any other human being. Pell recovered from his bruised leg and began working with Joran as an independent hunter. Several younger men joined them. Kai refused when they tried to make him their official master, but he agreed to share tracking lessons and planning when a dangerous contract required several people. After Captain Saren filed his report, the district office granted Kai a Royal Hazard Hunter license. Sela had already confirmed his right to work outside Varn's company, while the new seal expanded that status beyond Greybrook. The new seal let him accept interdistrict and crown-posted monster contracts without a company sponsor, and it gave neighboring officials a recognized way to hire him. In Greybrook and the surrounding settlements, even veteran hunters had started referring the most dangerous local contracts to Kai first. The failed widower had become the hunter people trusted when ordinary methods were not enough. Varn himself was transferred to the district town for judgment. Kai received the outcome by letter. The former hunting master lost his license and property claim over the company, and he was sentenced to confinement and labor for the break-in conspiracy and the Ironback disaster. The decision also ordered compensation to injured families from his remaining assets. Kai folded the letter and put it in the household records. He did not hang it on the wall. Leah asked whether that meant Varn was gone for good. From our lives? Yes, she nodded and returned to a book borrowed from the schoolkeeper. That reaction was exactly what Kai wanted. Varn had once been large enough in her world to determine whether the family ate. Now, he was paperwork. The children grew into the new life at different speeds. Ron became more interested in maps than weapons after discovering that Kai would let him plan safe routes through the nearby woods. He still wanted to become a hunter, but he had stopped imagining hunting as an endless sequence of glorious fights. One rainy afternoon, Kai found him explaining to Toby that the best hunt was the one where you came home with all your fingers. Toby immediately counted his fingers and announced he was already an excellent hunter. Mira stopped hiding bread. Kai noticed the change only because he had become used to checking her pockets with his eyes. For nearly a week, every piece she took from the table was eaten at the table. Then one evening, she slipped a sweet bun into her dress. Kai looked at her. Mira froze. For tomorrow? She shook her head quickly. I don't want to share it with Toby. Toby gasped from across the table. That is worse. Leah began laughing before Kai could answer. Mira laughed too, covering the pocket with both hands, while Toby demanded a court hearing. Kai sat back and listened to them argue over a sweet bun in a warm kitchen with a full pantry behind him. 11 weeks earlier, the argument at this table would have been over who received the last spoon of porridge. The contrast was sitting in front of him, louder and healthier than any system message. The family now had a money reserve hidden in the house, and a second smaller amount deposited with the district merchant office. The pantry held enough grain, beans, dried vegetables, and preserved meat for a long winter. Firewood was stacked under a proper roof. Each child owned boots that fit. Leah had 2 dresses that were not patched at the knees. This caused her more discomfort than any monster. Why do I need 2? Because people occasionally wash clothing. I can wash one at night and stand beside the stove until morning? I could. Kai looked at Ron. Your sister is trying to defeat clothing through endurance. Ron wisely stayed out of it. Buy her 3. Leah chased him around the table. Kai let her. The system also changed in the least traumatic way possible. It stayed exactly the same. Hunts still produced credits according to real danger. The family duty still paid 2 credits when the conditions were met. Ammunition still cost credits. Weapons still appeared physically when purchased. The catalog did not offer strength, magic, healing, or money. After the emergency reward, Kai had more than 1,000 credits again. He resisted the urge to spend them, simply because he could. He opened the armory at night and scrolled through modern equipment that would have made his first-day self stare for an hour. Some weapons were now affordable. Others cost several times his entire balance. He bought only a modest resupply of ammunition and a few practical maintenance items the local world could not provide. The rest stayed in his account. A local blacksmith could still make him a knife. A Greybrook carpenter could still build a box. Hunter credits belonged to the impossible things. On a quiet evening, near the end of the 11th week, dinner became an argument over meat. Leah had roasted ironback with onions and thick gravy. There was fresh bread, root vegetables, and a jar of berry preserve open on the table. Ron looked at his plate and sighed. Meat again? The entire table went silent. Kai slowly raised his head. Ron realized what he had said. Leah pressed her lips together. Mira stared at Ron in fascinated horror. Toby pointed at him. Rich person. Ron turned red. I meant the same meat. We have eaten ironback 4 times this week. Kai continued staring. Ron raised both hands. I am grateful. Very grateful. I just think a fish might be good. Leah lost the fight and started laughing. Mira joined her. Toby repeated rich person until Ron threatened to hide every sweet bun in the house. Kai looked down at his own plate and finally laughed with them. A knock came at the door after sunset. The room quieted automatically. Old habits did not vanish simply because danger had decreased. Kai checked the window before opening the door. Captain Saren stood outside. He had come alone this time. His dark blue border coat was dusty from travel, and a leather case hung from one shoulder. He looked past Kai toward the dinner table. Bad time? Depends. Did you bring another herd? Only paperwork. Come in. Saren waited while the children finished dinner. He accepted a cup of tea and answered Toby's questions about whether captains were allowed to arrest bears. He told Ron that the border service used maps constantly and let him look at a folded northern route chart. Leia watched Saren with the measured caution she reserved for every official adult who might create expenses. Mira drew him before he finished his tea. She gave him a sword, twice the length of his body. Saren said it was an improvement over the real one. When the table had been cleared, Kai stepped outside with him. Night had settled over Greybrook. New boards shone pale on repaired roofs. The northern road still carried scars from the Ironback attack, but the broken wagons were gone. Somewhere near the square, a fiddle played badly. Saren opened the leather case. Inside lay a twisted plate of dark metal. It was thick enough that Kai first thought it came from a wagon or siege machine. One edge had been folded inward. 4 deep grooves crossed the surface, bending the metal rather than merely scratching it. Part of the gate? Kai asked. Outer gate plate. Saren handed it to him. The metal was heavy. The stonehorn you killed weighed less than a ton, Saren said. Kai glanced at him. And? This thing went through a gate built to hold a ram team. Saren's tone lost the faint humor he usually carried. 6 days after his first visit to Greybrook, the creature of Black Ridge had attacked a 3rd time. It struck a fortified supply post before dawn, killed 6 soldiers, shattered a watch platform, and disappeared into the ridge before the garrison could organize a pursuit. The tracking force, already being assembled, left 2 days later. 42 soldiers went with several of the best hunters from the north. 8 days after that, the survivors reached Northwatch. How many returned? Kai asked. Saren looked toward the lights of the village. 11. Kai's fingers tightened slightly on the bent plate. What happened to the others? Some died in the first contact. Some were lost in a rock slide when the creature changed the terrain under them. The survivors say it learns. It attacked their rear after they adjusted formation. Magic? Maybe. Maybe an unknown monster ability. The ridge has old ruins and worse stories. I do not need you to believe the stories. I need someone who can kill from distances our hunters cannot use, and who understands changing positions after an attack. Kai gave the plate back. This was no longer the vague possibility Saren had mentioned beside the Stonehorn skull. It was a contract. A dangerous one. Unique Royal Hunt available. Target: Black Ridge Beast. Threat class: unknown. Confirmed history: destruction of fortified positions. Multiple military casualties. Hunter credit reward. Evaluated upon confirmed hunt conditions and completion. Kai read the message twice. The system had never labeled a threat unknown before. He opened the armory to see the next price ceiling, not because he intended to buy something immediately. Farther into the modern catalog were weapons and professional equipment that had been absurd fantasies on his first day. One particular long-range platform caught his attention. Its cost was several times greater than all the credits currently in his account. Kai looked at the number, then he laughed once. Siren raised an eyebrow. What is funny? Nothing. That sounded like something. Kai closed the system. Through the window, he could see the children at the table. Ron was trying to copy part of Saren's route map from memory. Leah corrected the angle of his river line. Mira was adding a monster to the corner. Toby had stolen the last piece of bread and was hiding it behind his back, while everyone could clearly see him. They were fed, they were warm, the house was strong, the debt was gone, Varn was gone. Greybrook knew Kai's name. And the people here no longer looked at his children as the family of a failed hunter who might not survive winter. The first mission was complete. That was exactly why Kai could consider a larger one. He looked at Saren. I am not leaving tonight. I did not ask you to. Tomorrow we discuss payment, travel, authority, and who follows my decisions during the hunt. Those sound like conditions. They are. Then you are interested. Kai glanced once more toward the warm light inside his home. 11 weeks earlier, he had repaired a broken spear because 4 children needed dinner before sunset. Now a royal officer had brought him a piece of a shattered fortress and asked what it would cost to hunt the thing that broke it. Tomorrow, Kai said, we talk about the Black Ridge. Saren nodded and headed toward the village inn. Kai remained outside for another moment, listening to the ordinary sounds from his house. Then he went back in before Toby could eat the stolen bread and deny the evidence. On the wall behind a locked door rested a spear, an old rifle, a revolver, a scoped hunting rifle, and a modern weapon no smith in this world could reproduce. Kai had earned every step between them. Tomorrow, he would learn how expensive the next one was.